Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about meat cuts and how important it is for your personal culinary education to try and know all kinds of meat cuts. Now today we're going to be talking about a cut of steak that you can grill or pan fry it, and it is simply what I like to call France's best kept secret when it comes to steak. Now this particular piece of meat is one of the favorites amongst chefs, cooks and butchers. Back in the days, butchers were actually cutting this piece of meat off and keeping it for themselves. And tell you what, this is the most moist, juicy and tender steak there is. And once you've tried it with the recipe I'm going to give you, there's no turning back. So I'm sure I've raised your curiosity already and you want to know surely what is that particular cut of meat. Well, look at it, it is right here. This particular piece of meat is we call it in French l'onglet, an onglet, but you have a similar one called bavette. In English, there's actually different terms depending on which country, but most of the time it is known either as the flank steak or like here, the hanger steak, H-A-N-G-E-R, and not like a hanger, sorry for the pronunciation. And it is a very, very interesting piece of meat for the simple reason that this is considered to be a low-cost cut that everybody dismisses. And it is absolutely stunning to see that a lot of people never try that and don't even know that you can actually use this as a steak, grilled or pan fried, and that can open a total new horizon. If you're someone that likes steaks, you are going to be blown off, honestly, guaranteed. So let me show you a little bit the particularity of this meat here and what needs to be done with it before we can actually cook it. So let's have a look at this piece of meat in more details. This is the onglet, usually find either in the flank or the plate, depending if you have the onglet or the bavette. I'll put the details on the video description. You get it as a big piece of meat that you're going to have to work on. You're going to have to trim and separate. But the big particularity of this meat is this. Look at this. The fiber of the muscles here are very defined, almost like the flaking of a fish. Okay? So we're going to work our way to clean these and separate these two. You're going to have one big steak here. We're going to remove here. We're going to have another piece on here to make the famous ultra-classic Parisian dish called the onglet à l'échalote, which is this hanger steak with a shallot and parsley pan sauce. I'm telling you that once you're going to try this, it's no joke, it is really good. So let's get a sharp knife and we're going to do some paring. Alright, so let's change the chopping board here, and I'd like to talk about these, the colors of chopping board. This is what you can find in culinary school a lot. There is a color convention when it comes to what board to use to avoid cross-contamination. Red boards for meat, green boards are for vegetables, and blue board usually are for fish. I'll put a link in the video description if you want to buy some. They're actually very cheap, this kind of plastic material, very safe, very hygienic. So this is one of the things you can use, especially for meats if there's a lot of juice. So these steaks, when I'm talking about paring, it's all about, it's not a big job. You see these pieces here? All this excess, for instance, of skin. What we want to do, got a little bowl on the side here for the offcuts, is to basically clean our meat. So the first thing is just go around and all these little bits like that. Look at this. Big piece of skin, anything like that. We're going to start by trimming all of these all around the meat. So you go around your meat. As you can see, all the little fibers have been kinds of trimmed and there's pieces of skin, things like this. The key is really a light kind of knife. You don't kind of force like that. And you pick up something, sharpen up, and very slowly you let all the fibers, you pull a little bit and let the natural, you see the natural force is going to detach everything and to really expose just the muscle. Sometimes you can also have these pieces of fat. For instance, like this, that's a little bit too much. You don't want to cut everything, but you can just, remove a little bit because fat is good. We want to keep some. So you go around, but that's a pretty good job already. The next part is this. And that is going to be a chewy part, and it kind of attaches everything. And so you can go around and start to slice very, very gently, and you try to go inside the meat and along, like it's a kind of a tendon. I'm not a butcher, I'm telling you that. But if you if you see what I'm doing here, you see? I'm just exposing all of that white part, and all what I want to keep here is just the actual steak, and just the really tender bit, and that white part. You don't want that in your plate because that's going to be like a chewing gum. So we're just going to get rid of all that tendon here to separate the two steaks. I am done. I've prepared my steak, and this is the typical onglet. Look at that when it's trimmed. It's a beautiful cut. And the other section looks totally like an eye fillet. Look at the inside of the meat. It is absolutely tender and there's nothing chewy. You know already it's going to be good. And that is a cheap cut of meat that people don't want to hear about. Can you even believe this? The trimmings are here, and we're going to freeze this, keep this for when we want to make a beef short stock. Not for today, but you can keep them for another time. So when you've got this, you're going to cover it, put it in the fridge, and we're going to continue with the mise en place, which is slicing the shallots and chopping the parsley. Now we are making a parsley and shallot sauce, just a pan sauce, so we need to thinly slice some shallot. Now I'm showing this because sometimes people don't know for sure, but the shallots, they've got this little line here. And when you cut them, you don't go against the line like this, but you kind of follow the lines. So when we're going to be slicing here, it doesn't matter how you do it, it's a bit of a bistro style, but just go along the lines and make sure it's really kind of thin. Okay? For the parsley, I'm using curly parsley, but you can use flat leaf, not a problem. And as always, we want to have that nice thin chop of parsley. Our mise en place is now ready, and all what you need is in front of you here. We've got the chopped parsley, the shallots, we've got the famous onglet that's been seasoned with salt and pepper, a little nudge of butter. We're going to use 2 or 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. I'm using a 24 centimeters frying pan. This is a Mauvier one, which is very good to use. And for the rest, that's it. Last thing you need to know, you need to have your oven ready, preheated at 100 degrees or 90 degrees Celsius, even a little bit lower, to keep the meat warm while we're going to be making the sauce. All right, that's all we need to know. So when you got this and you're ready, let's go on the stove and let's start. And remember, pan sauces, things go very, very fast. We can't stop once we start, so make sure you got everything ready in front of you. And now let's start to cook the meat. So one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that you cannot cook that meat further than medium rare. It has to be served rare or medium rare, otherwise it's going to start to feel a little bit tough. So we're going to use medium heat. I've got 1 or 2 tablespoons up to you of oil. I'm using sunflower oil, and I'm going to wait for my pan to get into temperature, just nice and hot, so we can start to sizzle the meat. Okay, so when your oil starts to flow a little bit like water in your pan, usually it means it is hot enough. So immediately we're going to put our pieces of meat on there, and we're not going to move them around. That's very important. And so we're going to wait a good 2.5 minutes on a nice medium heat and wait for a nice coloration to appear on each side. All right, I get a little bit of color. Actually, I've left them 3 minutes because I'm taking it easy. I just want a little bit of color. But if you want, you can turn the heat a little bit higher to get more of a sizzle effect. But what I want is to really get some juices in my pan because we're going to make a pan sauce afterward. But if you feel the need to, you can crank up the heat to medium high. After 2 minutes, my small pieces are done. I'm going to reserve them on the tray that I've got here, cover them with foil, and put this into the oven. And I'm going to leave this a little bit more, just turn it around again, and it's going to be it for another minute. So for the sauce, you're going to immediately take your piece of butter. You can reduce the heat a little bit. And the first thing, I'm going to leave this to melt and then add the shallots. My butter is melted. I'm putting all the shallots in. You can raise the heat a little bit if you want. And then we're going to leave this to cook gently for 3 to 4 minutes. After a few minutes, we're going to take all of the vinegars, 3 or 4 tablespoons in there. You can put a bit more if you want. And like the Lyonnais style, basically, we're going to do a kind of a deglazing and leave this to reduce by half. So you see that sauce? It's a little bit like a stock, and you get a kind of a puree of shallots. So we're just going to put a little bit of salt in there. And of course the parsley. The parsley is up to you. I don't want to put too much. I'm going to start with a sprinkle like that and mix it in. I'm done. I've turned the heat off, and look at this. You get a nice kind of puree of shallot that's going to go nicely on top of the steak with that big sharpness. It's going to cut through the meat. Let's serve. All right, my meat is out of the oven, as you can see, because we don't have any stock. What we're going to do, we're going to take the meat and all the juices that was in there, that is going to be our instant stock. And that is going to bind the vinegar, the butter, the parsley to create that final bistro sauce that looks like this kind of brine puree, and it's full of flavor. So back to my red board again. And you see the fibers, remember I told you? Still there? And we're just going to go through. You see it might be a little bit, how I say, medium rare. It's really borderline. But look at that. Still going in there the juice, and it is super, super tender. Let's dress up on the plate. So all what needs to happen now, of course, is to take our steak, and you can kind of open it, just cut it at the last moment, and we're just going to pour that shallot sauce on top. So look at these cuts of meat. Of course, this is just the beginning. You need to serve this with salad. But for that, you only need to take a few of these shallots here. You don't want to overdo it, and the key is just to have these little fiber-like threads on top, just a little bit like that. And remember, this is really strong because there's vinegar into it, and just with a sprinkle of parsley. Okay, and that's again one of these bistro styles. So I'm just going to add a bit of salad, and we're going to do a tasting. And here we are with a little bit of salad, and this is a classic kind of bistro plate we'll have, called the onglet à l'échalote. So what it's so special about that piece of meat, we're going to try to cut through, even though I've been waiting. So look at how tender. See? It's effortless. It's cutting through. Honestly, it's hard to explain. It is so moist and juicy, and the more rare you do it, and the less you cook it, the even more tender it becomes. It is an absolute exquisite type of meat. You know what? That's what I call a steak. And as much as you can do it in a pat fried version like this, remember you can also grill it. But if you do that, you're going to miss out on that special sauce. And that's it, all the secrets have been revealed on how to make the famous onglet à l'échalote in the Parisian style. It's a simple recipe, but trust me, it is well worth it. Now, as always, if you make that recipe, please share your pictures on Instagram. I want to see what you're making, hashtag French Cook Academy. And if you want to follow me for the rest or ask questions, you can use the comment section. You can follow me on Facebook or even be a patron on my Patreon page. But that's it for me for this week. And leading up to Christmas, to finish actually the year, I'm going to do something special with an actual drink. It is going to be a Creole type of punch that you're going to be able to serve to get the party going for Christmas. So look forward for next week's video. Take care all. Bye-bye.